Bioluminescent trees, seemingly grown from captured nebulas, cast a soft glow along crystalline paths. Floating orbs drift serenely, projecting perfect, miniature galaxies that rotate in a profound, cosmic silence. At the very heart of this impossible garden, on a dais carved from what looks like solidified moonlight, stands Lord Tyrannus. He's tending to a bonsai tree, but its leaves are tiny, flickering supernovae. He doesn't even look up as Feng Zhu approaches. "Aesthetics are the highest expression of power," he says. His voice is a startlingly calm river flowing through the recent chaos. "Any brute can destroy. To create, to cultivate perfect order from chaos, that is true dominion." Feng Zhu feels a pressure here, but it's different. It's not the crushing, violent aura he felt before. This is a pervasive, inescapable weight, the feeling of a system so complete, so perfect, that it leaves no room for anything else. The very air is thick with refined cosmic chi, so pure it's almost toxic to his void devourer senses, a feast he cannot touch, a banquet he can't join without permission. Finally, Tyrannus turns. His eyes hold the deep, unhurried patience of ancient stars. "You interest me, Feng Zhu. Your energy signature is a flaw in the tapestry. A null value. In all my databases, you are an error. And yet, you persist. Explain yourself." Tyrannus gestures, and a stream of pure data materializes in the air between them. It flickers, showing recordings of Feng Zhu's battles, his impossible gravitational manipulations. The way he made matter simply disintegrate. "You operate outside the established cultivation paradigms," Tyrannus continues, his voice analytical. "This is not some forgotten technique or hidden law. This is foundational. Hacking. You manipulate the source code that lesser beings call laws." He takes a step forward, his presence now focused entirely on Feng Zhu. The offer comes, smooth and certain. "Serve me. Become the scalpel of the Dominion. Your sister's debt. A trifle. Her full restoration in the real world. It is well within my reach. I have resources beyond this mere simulation. You will have wealth. You will have security. And you will have purpose within a perfected hierarchy." Feng Zhu remains silent, his mind racing, assessing the situation. This isn't a simple fight of strength. Not yet. This is a contest of ideologies, a battle of philosophies. He finally speaks, his voice echoing flatly in the pristine, perfect space. "You cultivate order. You build hierarchies. You see the universe as a system to be mastered." He looks down at his own hand, where faint, dark static dances around his fingertips. "I am the end of systems. The Void Devourer doesn't master chaos. It is the chaos that comes after the last law has faded. I cannot serve your order. I am its conclusion." Tyrannus lets out a sigh, a sound of genuine, academic disappointment. "Then you are not a scalpel. You are a cancer." He doesn't lunge or power up. He simply defiance. He raises a single finger, and the very laws of physics within the chamber rewrite themselves. Tyrannus's domain is activated, the celestial court. Instantly, gravity reverses in a 10-meter radius around Feng Zhu, yanking him violently toward the crystalline ceiling. At the same time, the air around him solidifies, flash freezing into a crystal lattice, attempting to trap him in a cage of solid space. But Feng Zhu doesn't fight the reverse gravity. He accepts it. More than that, he adds his own power to it, increasing his personal gravity in the same upward direction. He rockets toward the ceiling, moving even faster than Tyrannus intended. Just a split second before impact, he unleashes his power. He uses Devour, not on the ceiling itself, but on the very concept of impact, the kinetic energy, the material strength, the physics of the collision. He phases right through it like a ghost, landing silently in a crouch on the crystal surface, which is now his floor, the solidified air. He doesn't shatter it, He uses entropic touch, not on the crystal, but on the energy that maintains its solid state. The latter sublimates away into harmless, breathable gas. He stands, looking down at Tyrannus from his new vantage point on the ceiling. Your domain is impressive, but it's still just a set of rules, and I devour rules. For the first time, Tyrannus's eyes glitter with something other than detached analysis. It's real interest. Good. A dialogue of force, then. He claps his hands together, a single, sharp sound that echoes like a gavel. From the miniature galaxies floating in the air, figures begin to detach. They are constellation avatars, humanoid forms, made of compacted starlight, each one a living embodiment of a celestial concept. The charging ram, the archer, the scales. These aren't monsters with health bars to be depleted. They are semi-autonomous expressions of the domain itself, each one designed to alter reality in a different way. The ram charges. Its path literally warps space around it, making physical evasion impossible. The archer draws its bow, firing arrows made of focused destiny that don't just home in on a target, but on the abstract concept of victory. The scales begins to glow, attempting to impose a condition of absolute balance on the battlefield, seeking to split Feng Zhu's power evenly among everyone present. The conceptual attacks are overwhelming. Feng Zhu reaches out and devours an incoming arrow of destiny. But instead of just negating it, a searing flood of raw data, the preordained victory of the arrow, pours into his mind, stunning him for a crucial moment. In that instant, the ram slams into him. It's not a hit of brute force, it's the impact of an inevitable conclusion. He's hurled across the chamber, crashing through one of the beautiful nebula trees, shattering starlight. As he struggles to reorient, the power of the scales lands. He feels a terrifying, lurching sensation as if a part of his soul is being ripped out. Half of his void energy is siphoned away, not destroyed, but transferred. He sees it arc across the room, feeding into the archer avatar, whose next arrow now glows with twice the horrifying, reality-bending light. For the first time, Feng Zhu faces a power that doesn't just try to overpower him, but actively outrights reality on a level he can't easily consume. Feng Zhu staggered back, his mind reeling. These avatars weren't just constructs, they were manifestations of cosmic law, too dense, too layered with meaning to be devoured head-on. Fighting them was like trying to drink an ocean. He had to attack the source, not the symptoms. His gaze shifted from the spectral warriors to the miniature galaxies floating serenely in the arboretum, the projectors of this grand illusion. Focusing his will, he targeted the archer's home galaxy. He didn't unleash a massive gravitational pull. That would be too crude. Instead, he wove the law of gravity into an infinitesimally small point, a micro-singularity, and placed it right at the heart of the swirling orb. There was a soft pop, like a soap bubble bursting. The miniature galaxy imploded, vanishing in a silent flash. Across the room, the archer avatar flickered, its form dissolving into nothingness. One down. A slow, deliberate clap echoed through the garden. Resourceful, Tyrannus said, his voice laced with the detached approval of a master grading a student. He didn't bother summoning a replacement. With a mere thought, the remaining avatars, the swordsman, the spearman, the titan, all dissolved back into motes of light. You understand localized negation, Tyrannus continued, his tone shifting. A useful, but limited skill. Let us broaden the scope. He raised both hands. The world dissolved. The crystalline trees, the glowing flora, the very ground beneath their feet melted away into non-existence. In their place stretched an endless, flat black plain under a sky devoid of sun or moon. but sown with 1,000,000,000 glittering stars. "Welcome to my inner world," Tyrannus announced, his voice now resonating with the authority of a god in his own creation. "My perfected reality. Here, I am not merely a player in the game. I am the game's producer." He pointed a single, imperious finger at Fengju. A command, not spoken, but felt, echoed through this new reality. "Edit command, delete exotic energy signature, void devour core." A wave of absolute, administrative power washed over Fengju. It wasn't a suppression. It was an erasure. He felt his connection to his core, the very heart of his power, simply vanish. His void energy ceased to exist. His synchronicity with the law of gravity went dark. One moment he was a demigod, the next, he was just a man, standing alone in an endless black space. Tyrannus began to walk towards him, his steps silent but heavy with finality. "This is the power of a stellar lord," he explained, his voice calm, almost educational. "We do not bend the rules of the universe. We have earned the right to write temporary ones. Your art, your very existence, is an error in the system. And I am simply removing it." Fengju collapsed to his knees, gasping for air that wasn't there. The silence within him was absolute, a profound emptiness that was more terrifying than any monster he had ever faced. He was stripped bare, his power, his identity, gone. But as Tyrannus stood over him, a phantom limb preparing to deliver the final blow, something stirred. It wasn't energy. It was memory. The memory of the void. The feeling of its cold embrace. He remembered the corruption, the 32% that stained his soul. It wasn't just an energy signature that could be deleted. It was a permanent alteration of his fundamental data. A scar carved so deep that even an admin command couldn't undo it. And within that scar, the whisper of the void remained. A thought, not his own, but a truth that was part of him now. You are not energy. You are the absence that defines the shape of energy. He can delete the water, but he cannot delete the shape of the cup. Fengju looked up, his gaze bypassing Tyrannus entirely, fixing on the perfect, star-studded blackness of the inner world sky. "You deleted my power," he rasped, his voice raw. "But you can't delete me. I am not a void devourer. I am the void." He didn't try to summon his lost energy. He did the opposite. He performed the ultimate act of devouring on himself. He focused every last ounce of his will, his consciousness, his being, and consumed the last vestiges of his own identity. He devoured his attachment to a defined set of powers, his reliance on his core, and most of all, his fear of being erased. He didn't just wield the null, he embraced it. He became the null value. Tyrannus's perfect reality flickered. A patch of the starry sky tore open, not revealing light or some other dimension, but a deeper, more profound blackness. An emptiness that made the void of space look vibrant. Fengju's body became translucent, the edges beginning to pixelate and fray. He wasn't generating power. He was becoming a walking null sector, a living glitch, a hole in Tyrannus's meticulously crafted reality. The admin command, so precise in its design to delete a defined exotic energy, had nothing to lock onto. Fengju was no longer exotic. He was nothing, and you cannot command. Nothing to cease to exist. For the first time, Tyrannus's unshakable calm fractured. A flicker of genuine irritation crossed his face, a crack in the marble facade. Enough of this philosophical abstraction. With a thought, he cancelled the inner world. They snapped back to the physical throne room in an instant. The stone, the crystal, the throne, it all slammed back into reality. Fengju solidified, and as he did, his core roared back to life, not just restored, but stronger, purer, as if it had been conceptually refined in the crucible of nothingness. The test was over. Tyrannus was done with games. "If you will not be a tool," he declared, his voice losing its patient quality, "and you cannot be erased, then you will simply be overwritten." A terrifying energy, raw and titanic, began to coalesce above the Stellar Lord's throne. This wasn't a technique or a complex law. It was the raw material of creation and destruction itself. The temperature in the Grand Hall skyrocketed. The crystalline structures, which had withstood the clash of laws, began to melt and drip like wax. Above Tyrannus, a sphere of blinding plasma formed, swirling, compressing, igniting. It was a miniature sun, a contained star undergoing fusion, screaming with apocalyptic power. This was not a domain effect or an illusion. This was sheer, unadulterated force, concentrated into a single, unbearable point. This was the Stellar Lord's ultimate expression of power, Nova Cataclysm. "You speak of being the end of systems," Tyrannus boomed, his form silhouetted against the nascent star, his voice the roar of a celestial god. "Then withstand the system's birth and its death." He held the screaming, miniature sun aloft. The very fabric of the fortress groaned under the strain. Space itself warping around the sheer density of energy, Fengji was no longer facing a player, a ruler, or a man. He was facing a human-shaped supernova, ready to be unleashed. The Nova Cataclysm wasn't just a ball of fire. It was a reality-breaking event. Getting caught in that blast meant total, absolute deletion from existence, down to the last atom. Every single instinct in Fengji's body screamed at him to teleport, to get out of there. But it was no use. The star's immense gravity was bending space itself, locking down all escape routes. His other option: try to devour it directly. That would be like trying to drink the entire ocean in one gulp. The result would be instantaneous, catastrophic overload. He had less than a microsecond to make a choice. And in that sliver of a moment, he remembered the moon. Back then, he hadn't devoured it all at once. He'd been clever. He used his gravity powers to crush it first, to compress it into something manageable. That was the key. As Tyrannus, the Stellar Lord, readied himself to unleash this miniature sun, Fengji did the absolute last thing anyone expected. He didn't run. He didn't even try to block it. He used the very last ounce of his spatial awareness, not to escape, but to perform a single, insanely precise, suicidal micro-jump. He teleported directly inside the star's containment field, into the very heart of the forging nova. The inside was a storm of pure, unadulterated chaos. The data flooding his senses was instant, overwhelming agony. His avatar's integrity began to plummet, dropping faster and faster. This wasn't the slow, passive death of being crushed by a rock. This was active, furious creation tearing him apart molecule by molecule. But as the star tried to unmake him, something deep inside Fengji, his void devour core, reacted with its own kind of fury. It wasn't just hungry. It was offended. The nova represented the ultimate expression of somethingness, of existence and matter and energy. His void was the ultimate expression of nothingness, of non-existence. These two cosmic absolutes were now at war. And the battlefield was Fengji's very being. He knew he couldn't just eat the whole thing, so he didn't try. Instead, he focused his gravity law to its absolute, theoretical limit. Right there, at the star's core, he created a single point of infinite density. He wasn't trying to eat the sun anymore. He was giving it a black hole for a heart. For one terrible, stretched-out moment, two fundamental forces of the universe battled for supremacy. The outward, explosive pressure of nuclear fusion fought against the inward, irresistible pull of the singularity he had just created. With Fengji acting as the anchor, the singularity won. The Nova Cataclysm imploded. All that blinding light, the incinerating heat, the expanding shockwave of reality itself, it was all sucked violently inward. Collapsing back toward Fengji's position, with a sound like the entire universe taking a sharp, sudden breath. And then silence. The light vanished. The heat was gone. The grand throne room was still intact, though scorched and silent. Little motes of dust floated lazily through the emergency light beams that had flickered on. And there, at the center of the daze, stood Feng Zhu. Tendrils of black smoke and captured stellar fire still coiled around him like ethereal serpents. He was completely unharmed. In his outstretched palm, he held a perfect, marble-sized sphere of absolute, light-devouring blackness. It was the compressed essence of the nova, now tamed, stabilized, transformed into a void star. He slowly closed his hand, and the tiny sphere dissolved, merging into his body. He could feel it. His void energy wasn't just full, it was overflowing, brimming with power he'd never known. When he opened his eyes, they glowed with the cold, ancient light of a billion years of cosmic silence. Across the room, Tyrannus was down on one knee. He wasn't physically hurt, but his aura, his very presence, was shattered. His connection to the cosmic chi of the universe was frayed, unstable, and broken. He had poured a huge portion of his own cultivated power into forging that nova, and Feng Zhu hadn't just stopped it. He had stolen it. He had taken its power and made it his own. Tyrannus looked up, and his face wasn't filled with fear. It was filled with a dawning, horrifying understanding. He whispered, his voice trembling, You don't just break the rules. You consume the very framework that allows rules to exist." He finally realized what he was up against. This wasn't just a stronger player. This was an anti-player, a force that operated outside the game itself. Feng Zhu walked calmly across the scorched floor until he stood before the broken lord. He could have ended him right there. Devoured his entire cultivation base, erased him from the ranks of the powerful forever. But he didn't. Instead, he placed a hand on Tyrannus's shoulder. He activated his devourability, but this time, with the precision of a master surgeon. He didn't take everything. He just took one fundamental piece: the Stellar Lord's deep comprehension of stellar fusion, his mastery over that specific cosmic law. Tyrannus gasped as he felt it: decades, maybe centuries, of insight and knowledge being ripped away from his very soul. He staggered backward, his cultivation realm plummeting from the peak of a stellar lord all the way down to its shaky beginnings. He was a novice again. "This is your punishment," Feng Zhu said, his voice echoing with an undeniable finality. "You always preached that the strong prey on the weak. Well, now you are weak. Remember what it feels like to be the dust beneath someone's feet. And stay out of my way." With that, Feng Zhu turned his back on the fallen lord and walked out of the throne room. The Dominion soldiers who had gathered at the shattered doorways, armed and ready for a war, simply parted before him. They moved like a sea, making way for a glacier. Not a single one dared to raise a weapon. He found Su Ling waiting for him by a stolen shuttle in the main hangar. She saw him coming, saw that cold, void light still lingering in his eyes, and for a split second, she was afraid of him. He met her gaze, and the cosmic glow in his eyes dimmed just a little, a hint of the old Feng Zhu returning. "It's done," he said simply. "Let's go." As their shuttle blasted away from the crippled fortress, Feng Zhu looked down at his own hands, still humming with unimaginable power. A new notification, sent from the game's ultimate system, the Oracle, glowed with quiet inevitability on his interface. It read, "Containment failure imminent. The primal plague stirs in the graveyard of gods. Prepare for ascension, Warden." He had just defeated a self-proclaimed god of the game. Now, it seemed, he had to face the real sickness that the entire game was built to contain. The shuttle jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the iron asteria behind, a silent monument to a toppled dominion. Feng Zhu was no longer just a player, or even a warden. He was a sovereign of silence in a universe of noise, and his real duty was just beginning. Thanks for watching, everyone. This was a huge turning point in the story, and things are about to get even crazier. If you enjoyed this cosmic showdown, make sure to hit that like button, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, the Graveyard of Gods is a place you'll want to see. See you in the next one.